What do you think is the reason that it seems to be like pulling teeth, trying to get a full list out of the government?
Well, I think it's an emerging situation. It's one of those kind of political crises which is really damaging for the government of the day, simply because they don't know the scale of it, and it looks a bit duplicitous when you can't give a straight answer to the scale of it. But they probably don't know at this point. I mean, what we do know at the moment is that there's 104 schools that have either closed or partially closed. There's another 50 that this RAAC, this reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, which is obviously going to be phrase of the week, is present. There may also be problems with asbestos in these same buildings as well. There's 7 hospitals. There's multiple buildings from the Department of Work and Pensions. There's court buildings as well. So the list goes on and on and on. Now, there's some talk this morning that the government quango that looks after government buildings warned about a lot of this back in 2021. But it's one of those issues that it's not particularly politically sexy, and these are the things that often get ignored, and eventually they come up and bite you. Now, what's happened with this government, I think, is that we've had 13 years of the Conservatives, we've had 13 years of austerity. And what austerity means, first and foremost, is cutting capital expenditure. So cutting things from the long term. And the very first thing this government did back in 2010 was to cut the Building Schools for the Future programme. So you can put these 2 points together and you realise very quickly you end up with a mess. You end up with a backloaded problem. So that's what the government faces at the moment. It faces a backloaded problem from decisions it took or it didn't take in a timely manner a very long time ago.
Yeah, but I mean, to argue against that point is to say, well, the government didn't know just what a problem this was going to be. I mean, look, there was concerns over RAAC that it was reaching the end of its official lifespan, and that had to be addressed. But there wasn't previously concern, up until very recently, so we're told, that there was concern about RAAC that actually was still within its lifespan.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this report from 2021, which does highlight that this is a particular problem. There's a whistleblower on the front page of The Observer this morning, again, saying that ministers were told about this last year. But of course, what's happened over the course of the last year particularly is we've had 5 secretaries of state for education because of the various political problems at the top of the government. So it's kind of totemic of a government that's been in power for a very long time, that's running out of life force, if I can put it like that, and its own policies are catching up with it. So decisions that should have been made by previous secretaries of state weren't made, and it's landed at the door of Gillian Keegan, who's the current Secretary of State for Education. But if she doesn't get a grip very, very quickly of this issue, she's not going to have to worry about concrete beams. She's going to have to worry about concrete boots, because she'll be out at the next reshuffle.
Yes, mind you, I mean, if you try and make a political deal out of it, you have to look right back to when it was first mooted that this concrete had a defined lifespan, and then you could argue that things should have been done in the 80s and 90s. So you can't make a political point of this, can you?
Well, I mean, the 80s and 90s, again, I mean, not to make too political a point, but the Conservatives were in power then too. And again, it's when things get put on the never.
Come on.
Capital expenditure is often very dull and very boring and is the first thing that gets cut, because, of course, you're dealing with immediate problems that require immediate money. So often, these things get shoved onto the back burner. We've got lots of public buildings that are not desperately well made, that have been made over the last 40 years when kind of concrete was king, and this particular cheapo variant of concrete particularly was used, and it's just not built to last. We've got great public buildings in this country that, 100 years older, much older than that, even schools, that will kind of last forever because they're well built. And unfortunately, what we've had is a lot of faddism in architecture, particularly, and in commissioning, where if you can build these buildings on the cheap, you will often do that, and as a result of that, you get what you pay for with buildings. It's as simple as that. I mean, and some of this stuff is catching up with us.
Well, look, I mean, the problem is there is an issue here which needs to be addressed. The party political stuff that's coming out isn't actually very helpful at the moment, is it? I mean, look, Labour in Westminster obviously using it as an open goal, But Labour in Wales haven't even started looking at schools yet, so we understand. No idea what's happening in Northern Ireland. No idea what's happening with the SNP in Scotland. We haven't heard anything about Scottish schools in all of this. So, but in effect, this is affecting all political parties, or you could point the finger at them all anyway.
You can do. I mean, I think there's 35 schools that have been identified in Scotland as well. So this is a problem everywhere. And again, it goes back to part of the issue is kind of faddism in construction, which has left us with these problems. Just as in the 1950s and 1960s with high-rise tower blocks, left us with terrible problems in the 1980s and 1990s. So a bit more attention paid to the commissioning of public buildings would probably be a very good thing. But as I say, it's not deemed at the time when nothing's going wrong to be a desperately sexy issue. But this government was told about it in 2021. It was told again in 2022. There are various memos been flying around saying, "Look, this is an emerging problem." And again, I think it goes slightly to the political antennae of government ministers, and probably speaks to the quality of some of their advisors, that they don't think this issue is creeping up on us and might bite us. And it's often the boring issue and the dull issue and the issue that creeps towards you slowly that is the one that does you in the end. But this is a messy issue because it speaks to competence, but ultimately it's about the safety of children in schools, and that will, I think, be the thing that really sticks in the craw of voters, and they'll remember this. So it becomes very urgent that the government deals with it for their own sake.
Okay. It makes you very disillusioned, about the people leading us in any government, that they don't think that to give the OK to the building of public buildings that only have basically a 30-year lifespan. I mean, that's just unforgivable, isn't it?
Build with bricks.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. Build to last.
Build with bricks. It's as simple as that.